All right, it's 12:15, so we're going to start. If there's still people joining us, no problem at all. They can just drip in as we already start. Yeah, welcome everyone. Super nice to see you again at the Scrumptious Facilitators webinar. We've been on a summer break. I hope you all enjoyed a very nice summer break as well. And now we're excited and ready to pick up where we ended before the summer. With providing these short and snappy webinars that hopefully help you a little bit on your professional journey as a product owner or Scrum Master or any role within a team that is using Scrum or Agile, I would say. I think there's some of you who are very familiar with Scrum Facilitators, some who might be a bit new, but for the sake of time, I'll keep the introduction really short this time because I really want to give the stage to our guest speaker, whom I will introduce in a second. So yeah, basically, very shortly, we're Scrum Facilitators. We provide all Scrum.org trainings, also in the UK these days with Andy and Steve joining the club. We are all independent Scrum trainers who are also working as a Scrum Master or product owner, so in very daily practice, struggling ourselves and bringing those experiences to the trainings we give. I think that's our main USP. Yeah, so that's who we are, but we don't only do paid trainings, we also do these kind of events. We also have community meetups, for example, these three kind of events in which we try to chip in our efforts in sharing knowledge within the Agile community. And that's why we're here today as well, hopefully to provide you with an inspiring story. And that inspiring story is basically around, I think, the core need for Agile practices. We tend to build products that are actually never used because we don't really validate the value in time. We start building and we build something that's very expensive and in the end was not very successful in the market. It happens still very often, especially in software development, but not only in software development. What you see here is a promotion image of the Ford Edsel, which was launched in 1957. And the Ford Edsel was actually meant to be like a luxurious car, but for the price of a Ford. But to make it look like a luxurious car, it got a little bit more expensive than a affordable car in that time. So in the end, it ended up in between those two market segments, and nobody actually bought the Ford Edsel. It was a big flop in 1957. And just guess how much money Ford has invested in the Ford Edsel in the end to fail on the marketplace. Just place in the chat for a second, how many dollars do you think that, as an American company, so you can paste it in dollars, how many dollars have they spent on developing this car? Just paste it in the chat. Don't think for too long because I want to keep my introduction short. Yeah, the numbers are popping up. I see 250 million, it's really close. 20 million, more than a million. Yeah, Belinda, it's way more than a million. 300 million, almost, Nicole. It was $400 million in 1957 that was spent on developing this car, and it was rarely sold. So this is just an example of how products are developed without really knowing if it will bring enough value to your customers. Another example, if you start Googling on software projects that were over time or failed with a lot of money, you find these kind of Wikipedia pages full of examples of projects like the Cover Oregon project on the bottom of this list. It says it costed approximately $200 million, and the site was never able to accept online enrollments. That was apparently the goal of the system in the end. So users were instructed to mail in paper enrollments instead. I think it's really fascinating to every now and then Google these lists and see how much money is actually wasted on developing stuff that's never used. Well, and over time, I think that was one of the things that intrigued me most to become a product owner myself, because I think core to product ownership is sharpening your toolkit so that you apply practices that prevent you from letting this happen with your product or within your company. And one tool that I really appreciate, it's called Truth Curve. Don't take it too precisely. We already got questions about how much evidence is exactly built up at what place of the graph. Don't take it too detailed, I would say. But the truth curve is a image, a visualization that can help you determine, hey, how can I validate the value of my product at acceptable risk? So without doing too much investments at a point that you're not really sure yet if you will get any money out of it. So don't spend 400 million euros on a car before knowing if the value will actually be there. This curve, at the end of the Q&A, you can ask me questions, but for the sake of time, I will not explain this curve. I think that will appear in Ellissa's story. So I'll just jump to the introduction of Ellissa, our guest speaker, and then I'll hand over the word to her. So at the end, if you have any questions specifically about the truth curve, feel free to ask. So having said that, so we see that we build a lot of products that cost a lot of money and don't deliver any value. I would like to introduce our guest speaker. And she is a very beloved colleague of mine. We work together at Eneco. She is an amazing data scientist, really good at it. And the amazing thing about Ellissa is that she's also an amazing product owner. So she combines this role of being a data scientist and a product owner, which is like incredibly valuable to the organization. Next to all of these amazing things, she is also coming from the province where I live, from Limburg. So, well, then you have to be very amazing. Hey. And yeah, she was willing to share a story today. She will introduce it herself. We had to replace the real story with a artificial story because it's still classified. We couldn't share it here in public. So she transformed it to another product idea that is pure fiction, but that will still be able to explain our story in a really good way, I think. So yeah, Ellissa, thank you very much for being here, and I would say take the stage.
Thanks. So this is actually the moment we should give the applause to Kai, right? As we said during the introduction. Thanks, Kai, for the introduction. Thanks. Okay. But yeah, nothing more to say about my introduction, I think. So let's go through the story about Eneco and, well, developing this new product X. So really, we're actually working on a real product, but for today, we just came up with the analogy that will make the story a bit of a fairy tale, but actually one that is happening with another real product in real life. So let's go. Let me first introduce that fake product before I tell you about basically the journey so far I took with the team to well, develop it following the truth curve. So the product, or fairy tale product, is the laundry assistant, and that might give why I chose that one specifically. Well, the team that I operate in is actually a team that is about energy insights for the household that Eneco serves. And so we do all kinds of stuff to help the people in their house with consuming and saving energy. And in that context, this new service is gonna be a big success in the market. The laundry assistant. What does it do? Well, 3 fake USPs. It gives you insights in your washing behavior. It gives you clear overview of what you're doing and the costs, the energy costs in this case. It gives you proactive alerts when it's the right time to do your washes, when the laundry is piling up, and those kind of things. And it also, third USP, helps you to be carbon neutral, something that Eneco wants to help their customers with. Well, how does it work? Very simple. The washing machine, the laundry assistant just works with a smart plug on the washing machine that sets up the connection with Eneco, enables the data sharing and all the technology to bring the service to the customer in the Eneco app. So basically, the smart plug collects all the energy data and all other data needed to basically do all the smart analysis behind the scenes in order to give the consumer the 3 USPs in the Eneco app. Okay, so this is our fairy tale product that we're gonna talk about. And then I'll tell you a little bit more about how we started with this product and started applying the truth curve. Okay, so the truth curve, as Kai explains, is basically a path to follow to get more and more and more confident with the product that you're developing is actually something that, well, basically the market is waiting for, customers are waiting for, you are ready to develop anything. And something that is actually, I came across a few weeks ago while reading the first chapters of the book Inspired, is very closely related. So it says in this book that good product teams, they tackle risks upfront rather than at the end. I think it's very fitting to also the introduction story of Kai, and that there basically are 4 main risks that you should tackle on your way. And those are value risk. So does the customer actually value this product or service? Usability risk, can the customer actually use it? Feasibility risk, so can we actually, is it feasible? Can we make it? Are we technically capable to do it? And then 4th, business viability risk. So are we in the right context, in the right business? Is there a business case? Is our business ready to do this right now? Those are the 4 risks that you should tackle. And I think those are also the risks that you should validate when you follow the truth curve. So you're going to tackle all these risks. And by doing that, you get more and more confident that your product or service is, well, a good fit for the market. So our product, the laundry assistant, has a roadmap that we are following. And it's actually following the truth curve, and it's tackling all these different risks in parallel, so to say. Now, this roadmap I created before I read Inspired. So my roadmap has 2 risk tracks. It has a technical risk track and a business risk track. But actually, the technical risk track is like a little bit a combination of the feasible, feasible and usable risk track, and business is like the value and the value risk and the business viability risk in one. But basically, throughout 2021, for the laundry assistants, we have been undertaking initiatives, going from super small prototyping on the left side of the curve to more and more right now moving towards the right side of the curve. So let me take you through that roadmap to give you clear examples of what those things could be. So, by the way, I'm calling in from a holiday in France. So if my internet is unstable, let me know immediately, because I just had the feeling that there was a little bit of delay. But anyways, let's have a look at the next slide.
Yeah, listen, there was a little bit of a delay, and but it's re-established in time before it was really breaking up. So I'll monitor it. If it gets too bad, I'll interrupt. Okay?
Great, thanks.
We'll go to the next slide.
Yes, we're going to the next slide. So this was all introduction to let you know, basically our roadmap of this year is the truth curve. So that's what I want to show here. The roadmap we're following is also following the truth curve. So by each initiative we're taking, we're going up on the curve. So let's go back to Q1 this year, and let's see what we did for Laundry Assistant to basically start building up the first evidence that this might be something that the customer needs. And that is basically in the left side of the curve. So we're going to use observations, conversations, and a paper prototype. Let's have a look how that looked like on Laundry Assistant. So first of all, we started with some market research. So this was our observations and conversations phase. So what was the goal of this phase? The goal was to basically check, first check on the value risk and the business viability risk. We're going to get some feeling if the customer values this kind of laundry assistant service and is actually business viable. How did we do it? Well, by observations and conversations. So we had a few calls with some potential customers to learn about their problems and interests. And we just Googled and spoke to different people who know stuff about the market to sketch the market conditions, the size, knowing about all the different washing machines out there, imaginary basically, and seeing like which ones we need to cover to have a good market share in the Netherlands to make this service a success. And this resulted basically in our first, taken step on the truth curve, which was basically we had an estimation of the potential customer base and also the business case in general, how it could look like. So that was basically tackling some value and some business viability risk on the truth curve. And in parallel, we also tackled some feasibility, and usability risk. So we actually participated with an end-to-end multidisciplinary theme in a hackathon. This was our version, and of course, this is also like Kai explained, Truth Curve is just a guide. It doesn't need to be exactly that. So our paper prototype was actually a hackathon. So in this hackathon with a front-ender, back-ender, data scientist, UX, we actually in 2 days just created a first demo of an app of our laundry assistant. And the goal of this step was actually that we were proof that we could roughly build it, and a potential user, which were actually just 2 stakeholder colleagues, could roughly use it, and yeah, that it was all possible and speaking to the imagination, so to say. And also by doing that, because we were making a first real demo version, we also learned basically which usability and feasibility issues needed attention going forward. So where were the big, quick steps we took, where were basically the shortcuts we took to take forward with us on the truth curve, things that needed more validation and were still a risk. And also the good thing is, with this result, we had, just as with the paper prototype, a demo, something to show to other stakeholders and potential customers. So it became really real. Okay, so that was, let's go. Oh, I'm too tempted to go on. But first I have a question for you guys. So what do you think we did next? A, what would be a good step if you are on a truth curve and you just did those 2 things? What would you do next? Would you do fake door landing page experiment? B, would you start building the version in the Eneco app? Or pivot? Let the answers come in the chat.
I see 3 A's popping up already, Ellissa.
Yeah, I see them too. Well, depends on your results.
Sven is smart, Sven. He says depends on your results indeed.
All right, well, I'm not going to say anything. Let's just continue the story and see who is right.
All right, here we go.
All right, so we were ready actually based on the good results in the first phases to move a little bit on the curve. And what is there on the curve? We had digital prototyping, explainer videos, and landing pages. So this was, well, this already gives a little bit maybe away what the right answer was on the last multiple choice question. But this was basically our inspiration for activities in Q2 of this year for the laundry assistant. So let's have a look what that was. In the first place, we did a technical pilot. And that was basically a digital prototype. So where we first just made a super rough demo, this was going to be a fully digital working prototype of the laundry assistant, where we actually, again, are going to tackle some feasibility and usability risk on the curve. And what we're going to prove is that for a real customer to set up the laundry assistant without any help, that is feasible and, well, usable, so that's possible. How did we do that? Well, we actually did, we built a prototype, a digital prototype that was actually fully working to test this step, to test the connection making of the smart plug on the washing machine towards the data centers of Eneco, so to say. And this we tested with 30 colleagues that had absolutely no background in this innovation project. So they were just participating and connecting their laundry machine to our setup. And afterwards, we would ask them for feedback, so the things they struggle with or they didn't manage or these kind of things. And in this step, so this we actually did. And in this step, we also learned for which washing machine brands this setup works really well. But we also learned that for one washing machine type, it really didn't work yet. It was not the right moment and the technical context was not good yet. So we also knew that going forward, we should basically, well, not focus on that washing machine brand and focus on, for instance, Miele and Siemens. by the way, of course, the result of this step is also, again, having a even better than the demo version digital prototype, so a working prototype that, again, you can then show to customers and stakeholders. Yeah, that really shows how it really would work for your most common washing machine brands. So again, you can guess that next to this step, and here we come to the answer of the multiple choice question, we had also some other validation going on. Oh, sorry guys, I cannot see the next slide all the time because I work for one screen, again, from my holiday location. But I first would like to ask you something before I'm going to reveal the answer to the multiple choice question. So here we're going to tackle some value risk in the next step. So that was pretty hard to set up. So how do you really catch value? How do you really get from your customer what they value? It can sometimes be really tricky. At least that's what we think. What do you guys struggle with most if you're validating value? Maybe a nice thing to put in the chat now so we can discuss it in the Q&A after the story is done. Scoring method, I already see. How to get real feedback. Yeah, those were all things that we had to think of as well in this step. So let's go through it. So we're going to do the fake door landing page experiment, as some people already guessed from the multiple choice question. So
Ellissa?
Well, before I do that, yeah?
You broke up.
Yes?
So now you are really gone. So I can hear you now again. So maybe the last sentence, try to repeat and let's see how it goes.
Oh, sorry for that, guys. So is it better now?
Yeah, we can hear you again.
Perfect. So I'll just assume that I'll start from scratch for this slide. So the answer to the multiple choice question was the fake door landing page experiment to validate the proposition, tackle some value risk on the curve. And the goal was basically to get some good confidence that customers have a really healthy interest in the service. This we specifically put as a goal because we didn't want to make it too monetary yet, as we didn't want to scare away the first customer, real customers that would see this proposition. We just wanted to get a first confidence that there is a general healthy interest in this kind of services before we actually start exploring how we can monetize it or even market it basically. And by basically finding out what kind of healthy interest we have for the laundry assistant, we'll actually also hit some other goals. Namely, we will, by presenting the features that we plan to develop, we find out which ones are more or less important by actually asking that to these first real customers that see this fake door landing page. And all those people that enter this fake door landing page, they will also fill in a form, and by that we will get a user base that is super interested in our new to be made product. Well, so this landing page was just like the picture kind of shows. So it is basically a landing page which we potential new customers, they basically got a trigger in the Eneco app to actually be guided towards this landing page. There they saw an outlay of the new service, the laundry experiment, and a button, I want this, to basically make it as real as possible at this stage, that this is a real product, a real service that they could get, so that it's not sounding fake or something that is not real. And by clicking, I want this, we told them that this was actually not yet there, that this was a fake door, and that we really valued their interest and input, and that they could basically fill in a form. And basically, in the end, we got basically thousands of customers, potential customers, so to say, through this mechanism. And we collected in that way actually thousands of filled in forms. And some fresh from the press news is actually that we collected about 700 mail addresses of customers that have an interest in the laundry assistant. And we did a follow-up survey, again, to start tackling even more value risk validations. And that was sent out even yesterday evening. And this morning already 200 out of 700 of these customers replied to us on this survey. So that is actually some great last news success we had. So I'm pretty happy about that. But yeah, you can imagine that by doing this, you can basically find your market segment, get your interested customer base, and on top of that, start validating more and more of your value risks, the things that you're uncertain about your product, if it's bringing value to the customer. Okay, so this brings us back to the truth curve. We are actually ready now, being in Q3, almost in Q4, still making steps on now the second half of the truth curve, as outlined in this picture. And so now actually it becomes more and more tricky, because now we have a lot of, well, first proof of all our risks that it's most likely in a way going to work with this new product/service. But what is now the next step that we should take to actually, get to the more interesting part of the curve and really start building something that is a prototype for a real customer that's really there working end to end. And well, as you can see, we have some things on the roadmap. So let's have a look what we're doing right now. As in, actually, that we have hit a few challenges. So with these next steps, we really want to, well, within an echo, do the right things without making it too big at once. And that comes with, basically, these next steps comes with some challenges. And that I want to basically finish with before I get to the main learnings of this story.
Yeah, we basically didn't tackle everything yet, right, Ellissa? There's
exactly
challenges in this endeavor.
Exactly. So where we are right now on the curve, that brings quite a bit of challenge. So for our next steps, what we kind of saw was, okay, we have covered value risk, usability risk, and feasibility risk quite well with the examples I outlined in green. But the business viability risk, only so-so. Why? Well, we started out with some good market research, finding out that there is a market for this and what the properties of that market look like. But business viability risk also says something about, is this right now in my business the right context? Is somebody really owning it? Is this gonna work for my business to set out a service right now? And within an echo so far, as this was kind of a new kind of way to tackle innovation projects, so far there is no clear commercial business owner counterpart to our team. So although we have been setting all these steps, and that has been really encouraged by Eneco in general, there's no clear business or commercial team that's really owning this service as a counterpart to the more, well, technical part that we have been fulfilling. So in our next steps, this is definitely something on our roadmap that we should tackle. And that's also something that we're doing now. We're in conversations with how that basically bridges that gap within an echo. And that also basically is a little bit of a bridge to the second challenge we have. So this kind of corporate environments, they, well, without saying anything bad about it, as in that has definitely a place, but for this kind of new innovation, the tendency of more corporate environments is to think big from the start and also develop things big from the start. While this truth curve is, well, basically defending the opposite, right? So it's telling to make small steps at a time, all the time keep validating before you really make the big thing. And basically there's a temptation to skip parts of the curve at some point, because where we were right now, until the landing pages, it was all very doable in the corporate environment to make these small steps But now we actually want to go to the phase where you really make a Wizard of Oz or a first concierge MVP. And that is basically not a thing in an echo. Basically, they from here it's just boom, going to a real service in the app, or kind of that.
I ask you a question on this, Ellissa.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, wouldn't be good to, in this case or in those cases, just start with business viability risk at first, because because you spend a lot of time, and you doesn't know business viability risk if that is correct to proceed in that way.
That's a good suggestion you're making, and we actually have been discussing exactly that with our team. Okay. Should we have done it the other way around?
Yes.
And I think arguments can be made for the case, yes, because then typically what happens in a company like an Echo, if you start with that, you have all your stakeholders on your side, and they just start pushing and pushing you to build it. That's also the risk of it, right? If you start with tackling the business viability, basically all the other risks are forgotten. At least that happens quite often, right? So the business is just happy to make it, starts thinking big, and starts making a big service in the Echo app, for instance, without doing all the other validations that we have done. So I don't know what the correct answer is or what the correct order is. And there's definitely bad part for us now that we kind of neglected that for a while. But if we would have tackled it at the start, I don't know if we would have taken all the steps we have taken so far.
Yeah, I would say this is mostly the first step what you should take. And of course, don't forget the other risks, but this is the main priority. If you don't manage this part, you don't have to spend time on the others.
Yeah, I would agree, but I also agree with, so we have been discussing this in the team elaborately, and what Ellissa is saying is that within a corporate environment, when the business sees the dollars, then easily the value for the end user is forgotten, right? We make a business case in Excel and we put in all the numbers and we see a lot of euros or dollars below the line. And then it's really tempting to skip indications that the end user is not really waiting for the solution. But obviously, if you validate a solution but no one in the business adopts it, it's also not good, right? So I think in the end it's about not making any step significantly big until you have validated all of them. So maybe we shouldn't debate which one you should start with, but at least you should say, oh, wait, now we will do something pretty big, but we didn't validate the business risk yet. So let's not do it yet. And let's validate the business risk first. So I think it's a really interesting discussion, and it can lead a couple of ways, indeed.
Yes. And in hindsight, we definitely could have given it even more attention in parallel to the other risks in the past few months. But now we realize that we didn't, so we're working on it.
I think if the requester is aware of which cost he is making, he will make better choices before proceeding in these cases. Yeah,
absolutely. Ellissa, I think you have one more slide.
I think that is true. And these are the 3 tips that I would like to take from this real life story about a fairy tale product. The first one, I guess you can guess it already, as it was a major part of the story, is that for every step you do, define clearly which risks you are tackling. Maybe even, like we did, split your roadmap in different risk tracks. And we could even have done that better, as the discussion was just going. But this definitely helps you to see if you really, in parallel and in equal proportion are tackling all the risks on your way on the truth curve. Secondly, and this is also, in hindsight, you can always come up with a smaller step you could have taken to validate the same risk. And this is, I think, an art that also by experience you can get better and better in. But for every initiative you take, every risk you tackle or prototype you create, think smaller, 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 and smallest, because the less effort you put in that step, the less money you spend and the less costly it is to validate a particular risk that you're not certain of yet.
And in my opinion, Ellissa, to add to that, that's really teamwork, right? I often think I have a small idea, then we start talking and I say, yeah, but why do we this already? Why don't we do that or that? So it really requires continuous talking with your team and your stakeholders to figure out what's really the smallest step, because often
Absolutely.
we have the smallest step already, but we can even do better indeed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree on that one. And last, the third advice from this story to take is, so try actually to find ways in your little bit slower corporate organization to execute this kind of innovation steps outside of the maybe existing corporate structures. And I think this story was also a little bit about that. So typically corporate organizations don't organize new projects and services like this. But if you really want to validate with small steps following the truth curve, sometimes you need to find some opportunities or loopholes to do that. And often you will amaze the organization with the end results, I can say. So yeah, basically this is what I would like you to take home from today's lunch session. And I think by that we can conclude that this is the end, but next slide, Guy. Of course, we're going to continue with the next validation step on the truth curve. Yeah, so thanks.
So now is the time that we can really applaud. Yay! Thanks a lot for sharing your story, Ellissa. And yeah, of course, we've been on this ride together. And yeah, I think it's fantastic. Unfortunately, we can't tell what this really is about, but it looks really promising. And the nice thing is that by now we collected so much evidence of the customer value and the feasibility, that the business is actually now stepping up and saying, hey, we should adopt this. We should play. Or why didn't we place this in the business plan already? So you see that if you build up evidence on those other parts, you can also get this business part going. Or on the other side, if you build evidence on the business part, you can also get some initiatives going to validate the technical feasibility, for example. So you can use the small steps you make on any of these aspects to also justify and get those other validations going in your organization. We're not there yet. We can still find out that it's not feasible or not. The business doesn't have a right business model for it. But I have good hopes for this service, the real service, not the washing machines that Ellissa used. That it will actually reach our customers in the near future. And yeah, then I would be really proud, because we really applied the truth curve in all of this. And maybe closing off, I've got one question to you as an audience. What do you think, in applying the truth curve, is the perceived biggest setback or drawback when you apply this? How do your stakeholders perceive this if you do this? What's the biggest reason to argue that we shouldn't do it, maybe? We just paste it in the chat, because that's the takeaway that I also want to give you after this this talk from Ellissa. I'm looking for the chat because I removed it. Yeah, senior leadership often looks for ways to skip over steps. Exactly, Nicole. That was what I was looking for. It takes longer than you like. It takes time, because you have to set up an experiment, not only run the experiment, but also take the time to evaluate the experiment. So you have to take time to gather data. You have to collect enough data to be significant. And then you have to take the time to process the data before you plan the next step. So there's also some waiting time between running your experiment and being able to set up the next experiment. So it's pretty challenging. You also want to be in time in the market, of course. So if you a potential risk is that you keep validating for years and then someone else puts the product in the marketplace, of course. But it can seem slow, especially at the start, when you're at the early stages of the truth curve. It can seem slow to your stakeholders. So it's important that you practice your skill set as a product owner to explain this in a really good way to your stakeholders, so that they see that there's more value in being patient than in rushing and skipping steps of the truth curve. So maybe next time you can bring the picture of the Ford Edsel and show them this $400 million car in 1957. I think that would be billions these days, that never delivered any value. So my advice also would be to really practice these skills so that you can take your stakeholders along in being patient and applying this truth curve with new innovations. Yeah, that's it from our side. I still have like five minutes. We'll share the slides afterwards. There's just a short slide that I always bring on the attention. Of course, we also run our trainings. Next up is our product owner advanced training, which is our first physical class after the COVID period. It will be in Utrecht. So for people outside of the Netherlands, it's a bit difficult, I can imagine, to join. But we also still offer virtual editions. So if you're curious, just have a look at our scheduled trainings. Next to it, you see a QR code that you can scan now, or that you can find in the documentation that's shared afterwards, or the prints of the slides. We have a free Slack community for anyone who has participated in the Scrum Facilitators event, where you can share ideas, take initiatives, or join initiatives of other Scrum Facilitators. And that community is completely free of charge. So if you like to join there, just scan the QR code and feel free to join. Yeah, is there any questions from the audience? That's the last step.
Should we still, I think at the beginning we had this question of what a Wizard of Oz actually is in the truth curve.
Do you want to explain that, Ellissa?
Oh, I sure can try. So I've actually never, so we didn't come at the stage yet where we actually built the Wizard of Oz. Maybe hopefully that is actually the next thing we can do. But it would actually be a, well, a fully working version of your service/product. However, that is what the customer thinks. And in the background, actually, you might still do some manual, or let's say, yeah, I think manual is the best word, manual steps behind the scenes that the customer doesn't notice at all. But actually the service or product that looks super real is still not super automated for real, actually. That's my take on it.
Yeah, that's a really good explanation, I think. So I think one of the best examples is Zappos, the shoes vendor in the United States. Basically, he started with a front-end website suggesting that he had all kinds of brands and models in stock, but actually when someone purchased a pair of shoes, he would run to the local shoe store, purchase the shoes, and just send it through the local post office, until he couldn't handle that himself anymore. And then he was like, okay, now I should automate things and start building up a own supply chain because I have too many customers to keep doing it this way.
Yes.
Maybe in the chat there's some other questions.
Yeah, we already had a chatty answer to the, as in an in-chat answer to the MVP matter. I'm not sure what your take on it is, Kai.
Yeah, I think if you go back to the definition of minimum viable product, is something that's good enough to really sell to a customer, but as small as possible to be able to launch it fast. So for example, a paper prototype, I wouldn't call it an MVP because it's not viable. It's not viable to sell to a customer. So a minimum viable product would already go quite a bit to the right of the truth curve towards maybe a beta launch or something. But it's actually something that you can really benefit from as a business, because you can actually sell it to your customer, or if you're not selling, you can benefit from it in another way. Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think every step on the truth curve is an MVP, but somewhere towards the right side where you start shipping a first version. Maybe a Wizard of Oz can already be like an MVP because you leave parts of the process out, but the product seems to be there. Maybe from there on, we could slowly call it an MVP, I would say. So I see people going to refinement sessions. I think we're ready to close off if there's no more questions. Thanks a lot for being here. I really enjoyed it. And most of all, a big thanks to Ellissa. Really nice that you wanted to share your story here, Ellissa. And we'll see what the future brings
Thanks for having me.
For our great service.
Yes, definitely. Yes.
All right.
Thanks to everyone for listening. And thanks, well, Kai and your colleagues from Scrum Facilitators for having me.
It was a big pleasure. All right. So I hope you enjoyed your lunch and see you next time.